Hi, this is Fatima. Here let us discuss about model binding in ASP.NET Core MVC application. Before proceeding to this video, watch my previous video where we have discussed about how to create a form in ASP.NET Core application using form tag helpers. What is this model binding in ASP.NET Core? This model binding is a mechanism in ASP.NET Core application which extracts the data from the HTTP request and then provides the extracted data to the controller action method parameters. The action method parameters may be simple types or complex types. Let us understand how does this model binding works in ASP.NET Core with a simple example. This is an ASP.NET Core MVC application we have created with a simple empty project template. Let us use this in order to understand the model binding working in ASP.NET Core. As we discussed earlier, it is our controller action methods which is going to handle the incoming HTTP request in ASP.NET Core MVC application. Let us understand this. Just run this application. To view the details of the product whose ID is 101, then we generally issue a GET request to this URL. Our application default route template present in the startup.cs routes the GET request which we issued here to the details action method of the home controller class. The MVC framework will automatically bind the data in the request to the action method parameter by name. If you notice, the parameter in the default route template is ID and the parameter name of the details action method is also ID. So the value 101 in this request URL is mapped to the ID parameter of the details action method. Let us understand this model binding in ASP.NET Core application with simple types. First, let us modify this details action method. Let us change the return type of the action method to string in order to return simply string. And let us change the code here. Now we are going to pass the two parameters. That is the details method now taking two parameters. Now if you see the modifications that we made here, the details method now taking two parameters. One is integer and then string, and we are returning the string. So by concatenating these two parameters, we are returning it as a string. Now let us issue a GET request to the URL. Just run it. Now if you see the output, this GET request will handle by the details action method. So it maps this value 101 to the ID parameter of the details action method. And we are not passing any value for the name parameter, so it is showing simply empty. So now let us pass the value for the name parameter also as a query string. So name equal to Fatima. Once we provided the value to the name parameter of the details action method, this value is mapped to the name parameter of the details action method, and you are seeing the respective output. MVC framework will automatically bind the data in this request to the action method parameter by name only. So if you are not providing the correct name, let us provide something like ABC and let us run this application. You can see it still again shows nothing for the name parameter. This is because the MVC framework will bind the data in this request to the action method parameter by name only. So let us give the same name. So you will see the correct output. And one more thing, we are already having the value for the ID parameter. Again, if you are adding the value for the ID parameter by using the query string like this, and if you append the ID parameter value to some other thing again, then if we run this application, it still uses the value parameter that we passed here only. This is because ASP.NET Core MVC uses 3 primary data sources to map this HTTP request data to the action method parameter in some order. First is it gives the preference to the form values, then the route values. After then it searches for the query string. So if you are not providing any value via the form or the route, then it will simply takes the value that we provided by this query string for the ID. You can see here the output as expected. We understand the model binding in ASP.NET Core with simple types. That is, if the action method parameter may be simple types like string or integer, etc. Hope you enjoyed this video. Our next video is about model binding in ASP.NET Core MVC with complex typing. Thank you.